What's up, folks? Sean, the Average Angler. Welcome to the channel. Thanks for watching. It is time for October. And man, let me tell you, picking a number of baits is really tough this month because, quite honestly, they're eating just about everything when you find them. So some of these baits are going to be similar or the same as last month because, you know, it's fall. We have changing weather. October is really where things start to kick into high gear. Also the month of the year where we oftentimes get to break out our rain gear and start wearing that. Thanks for clicking on the channel, taking your time to watch. Hopefully I can teach you something today, help you catch more fish. All right, so to start out, let's start out with a topwater, okay? And I like a walking bait. Now, the size of the bait and what bait you choose can change depending on wind, no wind, that kind of thing, okay? On a slick, calm day, I really like a small walking bait. This is a Lucky Craft Sammy, as is this. As is this. See if I can do this without stabbing myself. As is this. Okay. The really interesting thing here is they get louder and louder based on the size. Now, the little one is pretty slicked off to a slight ripple maybe on the water. Same thing for the next one. As we get into something a little bit noisier, this is going to be able to handle a little bit of wind. But this one, you can throw in some more chop. Now, an alternative and one you kind of don't want to necessarily leave out, depending on the size of your bait fish, I would say a popper, okay? I like the Iovino Splash It. Okay, he makes a couple different sizes. They make the small one. They make a bigger one. Where I fish, the bigger one tends to be better just because of the size of the fish. Also the size of the bait. Now, speaking of bait, let's go over something that I think will help you drastically because on some of my bodies of water, there is no shortage of bait. If you can find the larger bait that's being fed on, you will typically find the larger fish. Now, think about if you have bait this size, what's going to be eating it? And if that's all you have, then it's irrelevant. But what if you have bait this size in your lake? What do you think those bigger fish are going to want to eat? Okay, maybe that's a little big. Not really, though. There's another option, right? Okay. So, on one of my home lakes, Clear Lake, you can run into bait fish that are 6 inches long. You can run into bait fish that are freaking 1.5 inches long. And trust me, in my early days, I'd find that small bait and there would be fish in it. And I would key on it and I'd get my butt whooped. So keep that in mind. If you locate bigger fish, try and stay on them from day to day, week to week. Generally, they're going to get trapped up somewhere and they will be in the general vicinity. All right, next, as you noticed, I just picked up some Squarebills. Again, we're matching the hatch. Now, that's like a 50 size or a 1.5 size. Pretty cool custom color there. The other thing I'm going to do this time of year that you'll probably notice from the baits of choice, bluegill and shad are my two colors I'm trying to mimic, okay? The reason for that is the young of year class bluegill are easy pickings for a big fish. And then the shad, those are in my bodies of water, those are the general forage species this time of year. You know, a gill, I think that's called Gillology, Crush 50, 6 cents. The light's not doing it justice, but it's a badass one. That one's called Jaint Juice. I love that name. Anyway, great colors at 6 cents. I'm not sponsored. I just love their baits. They work well. So, again, we're going to try and mimic what we're chasing. Now, this is one I'm going to paint today as a shad pattern. This is a very shallow runner. You notice the lip there. This bait isn't made anymore. It really bums me out, but I think there's some blanks, and I will look up some that are similar, but listen to this. Okay, big old knocker in that thing. It's pretty heavy bait, but it only runs a couple feet deep. It makes a ton of noise. Same thing with this one, okay? Makes a ton of noise. This time of year when you're fishing around bait, you need to do something to attract the attention to get the fish to eat your presentation. That can be noise, it can be size, right? Moving on. Next, we are going to have the good old chatterbait, and let's get into, since I forgot to do the rods. Okay. So I'm rigging up, getting ready to go to Clear Lake. This is the 733V. It's the Quercus, $199 price point. It's called the Wild Card bladed jig rod. There you'll see my bluegill pattern, okay? That one's a 3/8. Still has a long trailer on it. I will probably adjust that. Okay, I'll probably put something like a green pumpkin or a watermelon purple type grub on there because I really love the grub this time of year, as you saw in my other video. If you watched it, if you haven't, go back and watch the chatterbait video. Okay, so a lot of people are throwing chatterbaits this time of year, okay? You saw the Evo on there. The Evo and the jackhammer are probably the two most popular chatterbaits around. If that bite starts to fade, but the fish are still up in those areas, then we need to look for another approach. The Mini Max is one way to do it. A stealth blade is another way to do it, right? Or, this is the first gen, and you see those two BBs in the head there. That blade rocks back and forth and hits it. So you still have a great chatterbait in that normal size profile, but now you have a different sound available, okay? I have some white ones. They're in the boat. I'm packing, getting ready to go. So I pulled this one off of my bait storage rack I have on my workbench. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. We just did a chatterbait video. You know what to do. Go out there and do the juke. Come back and tell me how you did, okay? You're going to be very happy with the juke. If you don't know what the juke is, go back and watch that video. I teach you about the juke in that video. All right, along with the crankbait thing, there are going to be some deep fish. There's an 8XD. I love the 6XD. A little easier to throw. They're in the boat. The 8XD, great bait as well. And then the tactical crank by River to Sea, another good one this time of year. Speed cranking, folks. Okay, let's get into, and I'm not numbering these because quite honestly, it's just too difficult with as many baits and situations that you'll come across this time of year with weather changes and all that. But I'm going to have a swim bait tied on. Now, I'll go one of two ways. This is more my subtle, and this is a Crush City Mayor. Okay, again, shad, kind of bluegill with the purple gold flake on the top. And that is a Berkeley Fusion 6/0 hook in there. I think it's like 3/8 weight, might be a 1/4 ounce. Anyway, I will use underspins and non-underspin this time of year. Sometimes the subtle look where it sneaks up on them is a little bit better. I am throwing this on a Gen 3 Irod 703C. Okay, I only have so many 733s. I love the 733. There's also a 723 that would be phenomenal for this. For the Squarebills, I like the 704. Okay, I like the little shorter rod. You'll see my bluegill on there. That's the 106 cents. I like the shorter rods for casting accuracy. 7 foot, 6'10" to 7 foot's where I like to be. There's the Irod Quercus called Wild Card Topwater. It's IQ 702. If you're throwing the smaller stuff like the 50s, the small Sammys, the poppers, that's a good rod choice for that weight class of bait. This might surprise people because I don't talk a whole lot about forward-facing sonar. I still like to fish the way I've always fished. And I have FFS on my boat, and I will use it. It's not my favorite way to go. Catching fish is my favorite way to go, quite honestly. Okay, so this is something I have in the boat. It's not necessarily rigged at this time. But the old Deps Evoke shad and the 5-inch and my Horizon heads weedless. Okay, because where I'm going, there's going to be some grass dying off. There's always some moss, that kind of stuff. So I'm just trying to cover all my bases. Now, when am I going to use this? Well, if I get up on a dock, and this is pretty common at Clear Lake, and there's a ton of fish under there and I can't get it to bite, before I leave, I'm going to try. Okay? It's just a good way to give it another shot. Now, there's one other thing that I might try in that situation, and that's the glide bait. Okay. Knock, knock, knock. This one doesn't make noise that way, but it makes noise that way. Okay. This is a pretty big bait. I also have a size down from these. This is a Hinko. It's a knockoff of the Hinkle. I make them for myself. I don't sell these. I just and look, they don't swim very well. I'm messing around with weighting them, trying to get them to work right. And they will. They will work right once adjusted. Anyway, sometimes this is what you need to trigger. I will always have a glide bait on this time of year. Now, let me tell you, a little different than the springtime with the glide baits is I'm going to tend to throw those after I've found fish with other baits and they have shut down. In the springtime, it's going to be the opposite. I'm going to throw those baits first because I want to surprise the fish. The fish are not, they're aggressive this time of year. They need to feed up. Winter's coming. They're predators, all right? So we can throw those things in there and try and trigger them, and that's what I'm going to do before I move on. Now, that doesn't mean every single dock. It means in an area that I had found some good fish, or if it's an area that I believe a good one should be, high percentage spot. And this is going to be on an Irod Air 754C. This is Irod's top of the line bass fishing rod, $249 price point, super nice build, super nice custom handle on them, and the great actions. All right, so what is this bait? This is the time where I really like to throw the wobble head, okay? There's always a class of fish that are going to be eating craws. But this isn't necessarily just a craw. It could be considered a bluegill or whatever else you match your colors to. But the reason I like it is I can fish that deeper column where those fish might be hanging out. There's always going to be some deeper fish. There's always going to be some deeper shad, always going to be some deeper bluegill this time of year. And I can still cover water with this. There's certain areas at Clear Lake where I prefer to throw this bait or a deep diving crankbait just because it allows me to cover the column I want, which is bottom, out in deeper water, and I can keep moving, okay? They hit that bait very, very aggressively. It's a great way to cover water and hone in on where they're at. And look, sometimes they're just scattered and you just got to keep covering water, and every once in a while you're going to get that big bite. But I am looking for bigger than average fish pretty much all year long. I mean, I'm a tournament fisherman at heart. Even though I don't fish as many tournaments anymore, I'm still always looking for the best 5, right? It's bred into me. It's the way I've fished. It's the way I'm going to continue to fish. And these are baits and techniques that have done that for me, okay? Now, as one bonus, one last bait to throw on a spot that you've been doing really good, or if you're struggling and can't seem to get bit, but on your sonar, you're seeing there's fish there. Well, try an Ed rig or a shaky head, okay? It's sometimes finesse this time of year can be golden. And even on Clear Lake with those big fish, sometimes, hey, look, I remember some guys in a TOC years and years ago came down from the mother load, threw dart heads and a 4.5-inch worm on 6 and 8 pound test, and they won the tournament with mid-20s each day. All right, so you can't write anything off. It's the tough thing about October and picking baits. And of course, I've got my jigs. Okay, I've got 5 jig rods rigged up over there for Clear Lake next week. I got flipping, I've got offshore, I've got swimming, you name it. I've got the jig market covered. I love fishing jigs. So this is what I'm going to do. These are almost all baits that I have rigged up for Clear Lake next week. I'm hoping to do some instructional stuff while I'm there on these techniques. Of course, show you some fish catches, right? That's kind of the point, is I'm showing you stuff that works. Okay? Sean the Average Angler, thanks for watching. Be on the lookout for those videos coming, the how-tos, all that kind of stuff. Much like last month, that was a big hit. People really seem to like it. I appreciate the new subscribers. Thanks for coming along with us. Let's get out there and hook some.